The right to a fair trial. It's an American ideal enshrined in our Constitution. But in an age of social media and fast-moving information, it's a tough balancing act to make sure that right actually happens.
And in at least one part of Arkansas, that balancing act may have tilted a little too far to one side. In an 11 News investigation, Rolly Hoyt dug into major cases in Garland County and found that most major trials are hidden from the public in an effort to make selecting jurors easier. But at what cost?
There's not even words I can use to describe what it does to you. It affects you down to your cellular level.
Mike Porter says these words in the middle of a homemade memorial to his two sons, Tyson Stewart and Kason Porter. The pain he's describing comes not only from grief, but because the details of their deaths have never had a public airing in an open Arkansas court. The two died when they drove to buy marijuana from Braxton Gravitt. Gravitt told police they tried to rob him, so he shot them and claimed self-defense.
I think it was just taken as two young black thugs kicking in a door and trying to rob somebody, and it was just assumed that that was what it was. They couldn't speak on their behalf to say anything different, and the people there that night who were involved said different.
Gravitt was eventually convicted of using a phone to sell drugs. He never faced charges in the deaths of Tyson or Kason. The way the justice system arrived at that resolution has been hidden from us, the media and the public, and here's why. Think back to that time in 2020. 2 black men are dead. Immediate outrage because the shooter is white. Protests sprang up, social media lit up, and national leaders of Black Lives Matter offered to come to Hot Springs. Amid that tension came a fateful but routine decision. A gag order was put in place, cutting off all information.
As a prosecutor, I have an ethical obligation to ensure that the defendant is also entitled to a fair trial and does receive a fair trial.
As the prosecuting attorney in Garland County, Michelle Lawrence believes social media has made holding fair trials very difficult.
When we would garner 60 people to appear for jury duty, 30 of them would already tell us, look, I've already decided that this individual, most of the time, was guilty.
Lawrence says a gag order fixes that. The administrative judge for the circuit, Marcia Hernsberger, agrees. All parties, lawyers, police, family members are forbidden from talking about the case outside the courtroom.
What judges have to do is they need to balance the defendant's right to a fair trial versus the public's right to have information.
John DePippa is the Dean Emeritus at UA Little Rock's Bowen School of Law. He recognizes the need for gag orders, even though they set up a clash between two parts of the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment and the Sixth Amendment.
It should be done only in circumstances where it seems likely that information is going to harm the jury pool, and the judge should put on the record what those concerns are. So it's not as though it could be done routinely.
But our investigation found that gag orders are routine in Garland County. In fact, they used the same pre-printed form every time. In the last 5 years, judges granted more than 100 orders. Most are cases involving minors or sex crimes, obvious instances where victims need to be protected. But about a third are just notorious cases or notorious defendants, like convicted murderer Kevin Duck.
I don't watch Law & Order or Forensic Files, but I have a lot of friends who do, and in mass quantities. And I think just the type of case generates interest, which generates discussion about it, which generates conclusions without anyone knowing really what the evidence is.
But Lawrence is an outlier when it comes to asking for gag orders. We looked at Jefferson County and Pine Bluff, a smaller city but with more than 24 homicides in 2021. No gag orders come up in the public information portal called Court Connect. We found the same thing when we looked in Faulkner County and in Lonoke County, where the trial of Sheriff's Deputy Sergeant Mike Davis is drawing international attention, but does not have a gag order beyond the normal rules of the court. No gag orders in the last 5 years. And while we're talking about Court Connect, Judge Hernsberger has ordered gagged cases further into darkness.
The clerk in this county and our judges came to a conclusion that none of that stuff would be accessible on Court Connect.
In other words, the parties can't talk outside court, but the public's main way to find out what happened in court is hidden from view.
That's Dean DePippa's biggest concern. We asked Judge Hernsberger her reasoning, but she did not agree to speak with us. So families like Mike Porter are left in the dark about what happened in the case involving his sons and Braxton Gravitt.
I do not believe that had more attention been drawn to this, that he would have had all of these charges dropped. And you have multiple people telling a story this way, and the opposite side of that story, nobody can speak.
In Hot Springs, Rolly Hoyt, THV 11 News.